Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Administration and Finance Committee meeting on April the 24th, 2024. I will now call on Will Short, the clerk, to do the roll call.
Chair Redmond.
Present.
Councillor Craig. Present. Councillor Deutschmann. Councillor Erb. Councillor Foxton.
Present.
Councillor Hunig.
I'm here.
Councillor James.
Present.
Councillor Liggett.
Present.
Councillor McCabe. Present. Councillor Nowak. Present. Councillor Solonen.
Present.
Councillor Shantz.
Present.
Councillor Williams.
Present.
Councillor Wolf.
Present.
And regrets from Councillor Harris and Councillor Ivanovic en route, and so is Councillor Erb. Thank you.
Colleagues, I would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Chinootan people. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements and their contributions to our community. What I have learned in working with Indigenous people is that our relationship to the land should be one of stewardship, not ownership, and I'm honored to make this journey with them. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none, we have no presentations and no delegations. We will move to the consent agenda. If you wish to remove any item from the consent agenda, please indicate now, and we will not take questions on consent items unless they are requested to be moved to regular agenda. The items listed on the consent agenda will be dealt with in one motion. Are there any consent agenda items anyone wishes to have removed? Seeing none, we have 6.1 and 6.2 under this. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Wolf, seconded by Councillor Nowak. Please use your e-scribe buttons to vote. We're good. Thank you, colleagues. That is carried. We are now on to the regular agenda. First item is 7.1, Strategic Planning Priority, Homes for All. And before we deal with the property class tax ratios, I would call on Craig Dyer, Commissioner of Corporate Services and CFO, if you'd like to provide some comments or anticipate what our hard questions might be.
Thank you to the chair. I will try to do both. And I will start off by observing that there are 3 reports on the regular agenda today. One deals with 2024, one deals with 2023, and one deals with 2025. We will do our best to keep you aligned with the year to which we are referring. And we are going to start with a 2024 report. This is Council's annual review and decision making with respect to property tax class ratios. So there is a requirement for Regional Council to establish these ratios on an annual basis. And these ratios then apply to both regional and local municipal taxes. And these ratios essentially determine the extent to which different classes of property are responsible for paying property taxes. Every property in the province, including all those in Waterloo region, are assessed based on a valuation date of January 1st, 2016, and that forms the basis for our annual assessment roll. We have noted in the report that there was in the provincial budget back in March, there was the introduction of a new subclass under the new multi-residential class, which allows for a tax reduction of up to 35%. Staff will be reporting back later this year with respect to that ratio. Staff recommend that the ratios for 2024 be the same as used in 2023. This will ensure that there are no reallocations or tax shifts between classes. We've had discussion with the area municipal treasurers, and I can report that all the area municipal treasurers are supportive of the recommendations before you today.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Hunig, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Commissioner Dyer, I noticed that by this report, if I read it correctly, the ratio for landfill is 1.54. I'm wondering if you could speak to, if we raise that, what would do, so first of all, do we have the authority to raise that to say 2? And if we did that, what would the impact on the regional budget be, roughly speaking?
Mr. Dyer?
And I appreciate you very much.
It's a very good and most unexpected question.
So sorry.
So yeah, it's great. So let me try this. I believe, and I can confirm, that the restrictions in the Municipal Act would prevent council from raising the ratio. Ratios for commercial, industrial, and other properties classes, generally speaking, can only be reduced to become closer to the residential ratio of 1. So I don't think that ratio would be able to be increased. That being said, the context that I can give you is there is one property in the landfill class, which is the property that is owned and operated by the region of Waterloo, our landfill site. That is the only property that's in that class.
Right, and so say if we were to lower the ratio, that would lower our overall revenue, or it would, what would that do?
Yeah, so if the ratio was lowered, so changes in tax ratios don't impact the overall amount of taxation. So there's kind of a two-part process that we go through. The first is to establish the budget. And among the things that gets established in the budget is the total property tax revenue requirement. And then part 2 is the part that we're going through today, which is the establishing of tax ratios and tax rates to collect that revenue. So we would still collect the same amount of revenue. There would just be a shift between the landfill class and other classes of property.
I'm sorry that I've made you explain that so many times.
Councillor Craig?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I did want to bring this up at one time, hopefully today, but this is a perfect opportunity. And it deals with the landfill site in Cambridge off Savage Drive. And I have to say, I want to make this as a compliment to the staff out there and to the staff here of just how well set up it is for people to use that in terms of all the different things they want to get rid of, how beautiful the site is and how it's kept. I'm one of the frequenters out there, and I love going out there. So it's getting rid of things. So I just want to say to staff what a great setup the whole thing is in terms of dealing with the public and making it easy, making it aesthetic in a sense in terms of landfills. And I think the staff out there also do a great job in just communicating different things that you have questions about.
Councillor Craig, you have brought a whole new perspective to trash talking, so thank you.
I love landfills.
Councillor Foxton?
Thank you. If I may, in assistance to helping Councillor Unick understand, farm rate is at 0.25. So that means on every tax dollar, the farmer only pays 25 cents. The other 75 is put onto the residential taxes. Is that correct, Mr. Dyer?
Through the chair, almost.
I like almost.
It's almost correct. I would say that the remaining 75% is put onto every other property class, not just residential.
So, and the reason I bring this up is because the aggregate industry was able to get themselves claimed as farmland. So the taxes on aggregate, instead of them paying their whole value, are paying 25 cents on the dollar, and the rest of us are supplementing it. And we just won at the Supreme Court that Impact has to go and review that and change it because it is industrial. Thank you.
Councillor Hunick?
So thank you, Chair. Just to make sure I understand correctly, if we were to lower the ratio on the one landfill site that we have, that would essentially increase the burden on the individual taxpayer. Yes?
Through the chair, to a very small extent, yes.
Okay, so I don't want to do that. Thank you.
Councillor Schatz?
Excuse me, just to pick up a little bit on Councillor Foxton's question and comments, just so that we're all clear, what happens in terms of taxation for the buildings on a farm and on-farm industries compared to the aggregate piece that Councillor Foxton referenced?
So through the chair, I'll qualify my response by saying I'm not a property assessor, but I can try this. So on a typical, I think in a typical farmland situation, the house and 1 acre would be assessed and taxed at the residential rate. The remaining farmland would be assessed and taxed at a farmland rate, including farm structures that exist on that land. I'll admit I'm not entirely certain about where a farm structure ends and where a commercial building starts, but it would generally have to do with the type of activity that's happening, right? So if there are, for example, commercial sales happening, that I think will generally result in that portion of the building being assessed at a in the commercial class and pay taxes at the commercial rate, which of course is much higher than the farmland rate.
Which is very much different from how Sue was talking about the aggregate industry.
Not that anybody around the table needed to be dazzled by the expertise and the skill set of Mr. Dyer, but you continue to dazzle, Mr. Dyer. So we have a motion before us. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Hunick, seconded by Councillor McCabe. Please use your e-scribe to vote. Colleagues, that is carried. 7.2, strategic priority, equitable services and opportunities. And this is the 2023 plan update and year-end financial results. And I believe Connie McDonald, Chief Communications and Strategy Officer, is going to provide a presentation, and Cheryl Braun, Director of Corporate Finance, will speak to the financial aspects. So over to you, Connie.
Great, thank you, Chair. I'll just give a sec for the presentation to get up there. It is coming, we promise.
I could sing, but none of us would be happy.
All right, while we're getting the presentation up, it's my pleasure to introduce the next item, which is our fourth quarter progress report for 2023. As my colleague Craig Dyer said, we have 3 reports today, 3 different years, and we're going to take you back all the way to last year. This is a roundup of progress on our annual business plan along with related financial information. And none of this would be possible without Council's leadership and the dedicated work of regional staff and our partners. On screen here, you can see the landing page of our brand new 2023 annual report to the community, which we fondly call our regional yearbook. Just as we report to you on our performance and progress, we also report to the community. And today I'll walk you through the yearbook, which will be launched tomorrow, and highlight some of our collective achievements. Our new strategic plan, Growing with Care, was approved late summer 2023. The plan was built through extensive engagement through council, residents, partners, and employees from across the organization. And since that time, we have shifted focus on these priorities identified by community. Overall, the organization performed well during the fourth quarter of 2023. The list of achievements that we've collectively made is sizable, and there's much to celebrate and recognize. The report in your package provides a fulsome overview, so I'll focus today on some of those that are highlighted in the new yearbook. So our first yearbook, launched last year, was entitled 12 Stories of Change. We offered accessible, interactive content, bringing together videos, data, GIS mapping, and engaging visuals. And I'm pleased to share that 2022 yearbook was recently recognized with a Platinum International Marcom Award for Outstanding Annual Report in the Government category. Making government annual reports innovative, accessible, and digestible is no easy feat. And I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the incredible staff across multiple departments who created the yearbook and who have somehow made this year's even more incredible. These include staff from communications, strategy, the reconciliation and equity, diversity, inclusion team, staff from our GIS team, creative and multimedia services, and other staff from right across every department at the region. So let's take a quick look at the yearbook. The landing page introduces viewers to our new strategic plan, Growing with Care. The page allows viewers to watch a short video introducing Growing with Care and to click on the priority areas to learn more about each one. Accessibility was very important in the design. There are multiple ways to navigate an alt text on key images. We also have a PDF text version of all pages that are available. Throughout the yearbook, we worked to feature a variety of stories that demonstrate how we are making progress on each of our 4 priorities. Each of these stories highlight the impact we can have when we partner with the community to drive change on the issues impacting the region. In the interest of time, I'll just highlight a few of the stories and let you explore the details on your own. The first story we'll show is the community on board with e-bikes and e-scooters, which focuses on the launch of this program, its success, and its role in climate-aligned growth. The story also includes a list of FAQs to encourage people to get on board with this new way of getting about and advice on how to do that safely. Next up is our progress towards our priority of homes for all. This story provides an update on our Building Better Futures plan that's guiding our efforts to build more accessible, equitable, and affordable housing. The next story we have features our Upstream Fund, and that speaks to the Equitable Services and Opportunities priority. This yearbook story provides an overview of the Upstream Fund and introduces visitors to 3 upstream recipients: the Young City Growers, the Independent Living Waterloo Region, and the Woolwich Community Health Centre, and Engage Rural. Lastly, I'll just touch on, since this has been such a good topic of discussion today, there's also a story on extending the life of the landfill, focusing on building a sustainable community. This was very brief, but hopefully has given you a sense of the different visuals and content that you can spend some time getting through. We'll be launching this widely to the community tomorrow, and you can dig in at your leisure. These are really compelling and speak to our collective success as we look forward to the coming year as we continue to grow with care. With that, I will turn it over to my colleague Cheryl Braun for the 2023 Q4 financial update.
Thank you, Connie, and through you, Chair. I just have some highlights for the financial results for 2023. I don't have any fancy slides or anything to go with it, so just bear with me. We did see a small surplus for both the tax-supported and user rate budgets. On the tax side, direct regional services, excluding police, we saw a very small surplus of approximately 0.5%, or just under $2.5 million. While this is as near as break-even as we would like to be, there were a number of significant pluses and minuses that were reflected in that position. And those are kind of outlined in Appendix B. A couple of the most significant worth noting are on the revenue side. We did see a very positive transit revenue variance, primarily due to increased ridership through 2023, particularly in the last 4 months, September to December. On the expenditure side, we did exceed our budget provision for RDC exemptions by almost a little under 100%. We had a $9.4 million budget provision, and we exceeded that by $9.1 million. Moving over to user rates, wholesale user rates, 2023 operations resulted in a modest surplus of about 2% or $3.4 million. And that was a combination of both under expenditure and higher than anticipated revenues. And then finally, for WRPS, they were very near break even with a very, very small surplus of about $300,000 or 0.2%. And we've attached their financial results as presented to their board in March. So all of these surpluses will be allocated in accordance with past practice and our surplus allocation policy. So with that, I will pause and wait for ask if there's any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Deutschmann.
Thank you, Chair Redmond. I'm not going to support the acceptance of the financial results with respect to WRPS. The suggestion that the operating positive variance is $346,000 is not supported by the information provided. The reporting of the Q4 2023 results raised several questions. Some of the questions raised relate to the following. 1, the change in reporting of salaries and wages. 2, the transfer of funds to reserves over and above budget. And 3, the source of funding for certain programs like the tuition forgiveness program. The Human Resources Dashboard 2023 annual report provides that while the authorized sworn member complement is 833 members, there are only 805 hired by the end of 2023. This was actually a reduction of 5 officers from Q3 2023. This left a deficit of 28 officers. The average quarterly deficit in sworn officers for 2023 was 33 officers per quarter. This means that the region of Waterloo was paying for 33 more officers than were hired throughout 2023. And I note at the start of 2022, there were 797 sworn members. By the end of 2023, after 2 years, accounting for officers hired, less retirements and resignations, there was a net addition of 8 officers. The Q4 2023 report leaves many questions regarding the actual operating surplus of the WRPS budget. It's notable that portions of the Q4 2023 report format have been altered and do not align with the prior quarterly reports for 2023. This is particularly noted with the change in the presentation of wage and overtime costs. Prior to the Q4 2023 report, wages and salaries, including overtime costs, were reported as one number under salaries and wages. In the Q4 2023 report, wages are now divided such that full and part-time costs, paid duties, and overtime costs are reported separately. The sales and wages account was substantially below budgeted amounts for the first 3 quarters of 2023. The Q4 2023 report has significantly reduced that variance. The variance went from $3.1 million in Q1, $4.6 million in Q2, $6 million in Q3, to now where, if I have to add the numbers up because it's changed, it looks like it's 1.3. The salary and wages account included overtime costs in the first 3 quarters. There's no explanation for this significant drop in the variance from Q3 to Q4. As noted above, the average quarterly deficit in the sworn member complement was 33 officers. The region Waterloo paid for the full complement of officers, even though there was an average quarterly deficit of 33 officers. In addition to questions regarding salary and wages, there was a transfer to reserves from operating surplus over and above the budgeted amount. The interfund transfer reserves account was budgeted for $5.675 million. There was a transfer of $7.360, which is almost 1.7 over budget. If I take that 1.7 and add it to the 345, we're now over $2 million in actual surplus. Finally, the meetings, training, and conferences budget exceeded budget by $631,000. Now, the explanation provided there is for higher training costs as a result of forgiving Ontario Police College tuition loans to enhance equity amongst new recruits and stabilize staffing levels. I agree with this admirable goal and approach, but the issue is not the purpose of the spending, but the source of funds to support this program. There's no information that any reserve account was used for this program, but instead the funds would have come from operating surplus. So essentially, if you take a look at it, we probably spent $4 million for officers that didn't exist. And at the same time, as a council, we reduced our planned to end chronic homelessness by $4 million. So while we were thinking we were supporting ourselves by having security in our community, we actually reduced that by taking money away from housing supports, food security, drug addiction programs, mental health programs. So I can't support this information. I've thoroughly reviewed this, and I just don't feel that the presentation is accurate given the things that have been done to change it and to the transfers that occurred, especially intra-year, without budgetary approval. What should have happened was, especially with things like the reserve, what is the final surplus, and then decide what to do with the surplus, just as we're doing with the 354. It doesn't make sense that having 33 short officers per quarter would only result in a $354,000 deficit. Prior to the KPMG report, the average deficits each year were $3 million. And since the KPMG report, we've had a $284,000 deficit and now a $345,000 deficit. So I will not be voting in favor of receiving this report. Thank you.
So, Councillor Deutschman, I have other speakers, but I'm going to suggest, if you look at parts A, B, and C, is it B and C with which you have issue? So the first one is receive an update that shows implementation and progress towards achieving the vision of growing with care. You're fine with that one? It's B and C where you feel that you're unable to support it?
Right. If you're splitting it up, I'm happy to.
Okay, so I'm going to suggest, if I could have a mover and a seconder, we would take A separately from B and C. Moved by Councillor Fox and seconded by Councillor Wolf. I do have two other speakers before we go to the question, but we will deal with it in that manner. Councillor Salonen.
Thank you. The first thing I was going to ask was to split the voting items. The other one, I was wondering on the update and year-end financial results report on page 6 of 8. I just wanted clarification, and it might be that I misinterpreted it, and now my e-scribe has moved. I was just wondering, based off the policy, my understanding is the one reserve fund is not at $15 million, yet we didn't contribute the full 2.4 million over. Instead, we put 2.3 roughly into the tax stabilization reserve to reach a total balance of 13 million, or now as I'm saying that, I'm seeing that's the December 2023. I answered my own question. Sorry about that.
So, Cheryl, has she answered her own question? We're going to give you an A on that one, Councillor Salonen. Councillor Foxton.
Thank you. It's in regards to B and C, and just that the police don't do the, actually it's our staff that do the balancing and the budget and the true figures. Is that correct? So that our staff could answer the questions that Mr. Deutschman has brought up. Councillor Deutschman, correct? Or am I wrong? Wouldn't be the first time.
Mr. Dyer?
My apologies. Could I ask you to ask the question again? I'm not quite following.
The finances for Waterloo Regional Police are done by our department. Do they have their own financial department? Are these their figures on their own, or are they done by our team?
Yeah, so through the chair, the Waterloo Region Police has a director of finance and have finance people, and they prepare the statements for consideration by the board, and the board considers the most appropriate use of any police surplus.
Thank you.
And I guess I would just look to the clerk to confirm, but I understand that Chief Kroll will be coming in June to give us a mid-year update. So if we have any questions, that would be an appropriate time to ask the chief about all issues pertaining to WRPS. Thank you for pointing that out, Councillor Foxton. So it's been moved and seconded, and I'm going to suggest that we're dealing with Part A at this point in time, which is to receive the 2023 plan update that shows implementation and progress towards achieving the vision set out by Council and growing with care, Strategic Plan 2023 to 2027. So please vote on that piece, and then we will vote on points B and C separately. Colleagues, that is carried unanimously, which is wonderful. It's our strategic plan. And parts B and C are to approve the preliminary 2023 financial results for the purposes of preparing the region's 2023 audited financial statements, and C, apply the surplus allocation policy to 2023 financial results. Councillor Leggett, do you have a question on this before it goes to the vote?
No, I just want to qualify my vote. So I'm going to support Councillor Deutschmann because based on the information that he's giving us, I think we need to be looking at this a little bit more carefully. And I can't vote in support based on those questions. So I'm going to also not vote for this.
Thank you, colleagues. I see no further speakers, so please use your e-scribe to vote. Colleagues, this is unanticipated, so we are going to take a 5-minute recess. can appreciate that this has created an unanticipated wrinkle and does create some real challenges. I'm going to turn the floor over to Mr. Dyer to see if we can find a resolution to this juncture.
Thank you to the chair. I'll start with the failure of this motion is problematic for the region in terms of its year-end financial reporting and our ability to complete and present the audited financial statements for 2023, which is currently planned for the morning of May the 7th. Both of those pieces, essentially not approving Part A does not allow us to then go ahead and complete the final entries that we need to do in accordance with the surplus allocation policy, which I will remind committee relates to the region's portion of the surplus. The police surplus has already been dealt with by the board. The question then is, I guess my question through the chair to the committee is, what information could we bring back for you on May the 7th to A&F? We will need to, I believe the non-approval of these motions today means we can't go ahead with audit committee on May the 7th because we don't have all the instructions that we need from council to do so. So in order to get those instructions, more information would appear to be provided, and I think it would be very helpful for us to get a very clear indication from committee members as to what information you're looking for in order to put yourselves in a position where you can support the motion, the recommendations, parts B and C from today's report. And if we had that clarity, then we could bring a report back to A&F on May the 7th that would then go to council on May 22nd, and then we would hold an audit committee sometime after May 22nd in order to complete the year-end 2023 process.
So, Mr. Dyer, before I go to the speakers list, I do also would ask you to underscore, it was Councillor Foxton that said, does WRPS have a financial department? Do they do their own statements? And you had said yes to that. But can you also reiterate what component of our audited statements, what the relationship is with the police statements?
Certainly. So the financial statements that are presented to audit committee each year are a consolidated set of statements. In other words, they include the operations, expenditure, revenue, financing of the Police Services Board as well as the Library Board as well. So all of that gets consolidated into a single set of statements that's then put that is then put in front of audit committee.
Thank you. Councillor Deutschmann.
Thank you, Chair Edmund. Yeah, I guess we wanted to give Craig something different before he left.
You have succeeded.
So, if I may, I thought that as Craig was speaking, the thought that I had was the ability to submit written questions by a certain date, and then we would have a response back at the meeting that Craig was suggesting that this be brought to, some answers to some of the questions with respect to the reporting that WRPS has provided with their variance report. Because that is really what the issue is here. We're trying to understand what occurred and how it occurred. And we just want to ensure that there's a proper process in place, just as we apply a process to our affairs for the portion of the budget that we here around this horseshoe are responsible for. And it's just some better clarification on some of these issues. Certainly don't want to I anticipated there was this is a significant issue because we have to have audited financial statements prepared. That's crucial. It's just there's a significant concern on my part. I'm not speaking for anyone else. Other than Councillor Leggett did speak as well, but a concern about the information that has been provided, and we just want to ensure that we get some clarity about what has occurred, because that's our responsibility as individuals around this horseshoe to be satisfied on behalf of the people that elected us, that we feel that the matters are being presented to us appropriately. So I guess what I would need to hear, though, from Mr. Dyer is there a deadline with respect to audited financial statements and that sort of thing, so we understand the severity or for lack of any other term, of this situation? So I'd like to hear on that first.
Through the chair, there's no mandated or legislated date by which annual financial statements have to be approved.
Okay, so if there isn't, then we do have time to get some more answers to that portion of the budget that we are wondering about. And so I would suggest then is providing questions prior to the next meeting and having our team, our financial team, WRPS here as well to answer these questions. I think it's important that we hear about this. These are significant dollars that have a significant impact on our overall budgeting.
Councillor McCabe.
Thank you. I have a question. I think it's maybe more for clerks, but I'll start with a question for Craig. Is there a way to separate out the pieces that Councillor Deutschmann and some others have indicated by their votes that there's some questions and concerns around from the rest of our financial statements? Because I'm wondering, if that's possible. Well, I'll ask that question first.
Well, through the chair, I don't think there's an easy way to separate the two. What I might suggest, though, is that I'm not certain that the answers to the questions will result in any significant changes to the numbers. And so I'm wondering if there's a way where we could continue to proceed with our year-end process and at the same time provide some clarity for the committee around the numbers. And I would just like to go back to my previous answer about there being no legislated or mandated date, which technically is true. That being said, there is an annual reporting requirement called the Financial Information Return, which technically is due to the province by the end of May. And the further delay, a delay in the statements would prevent us from achieving that date. And in a worst case scenario, the province does have the ability to hold back funding to a municipality that hasn't submitted its FIR. I don't know how often they use that, but that has been communicated at some point in the past. So I'm wondering, I'm just thinking out loud a little bit here about if there's a way to keep both processes moving concurrently. The real challenge for us is we do need approval of these motions in order to, as I said, to complete our final our final entries for 2023.
Can I ask a follow-up then? Because really what oh, sorry, I'll wait for you.
You may.
Really what I'm wondering is, can we because you said that Chief Crowell's coming in June, if he could come in May, I'm just trying to figure out a way to advance this so that we do meet the timelines as you just outlined, Craig, but without missing those important deadlines. And so partly I'm wondering if we can't do that, then would another option be, so that we can meet those, is to do, this would be very, I'm sure, highly unusual, but to do a vote, a vote to reconsider. And if we reach that 2/3 bar, do that right away and then re-vote on it. Maybe people's votes would change. I don't know, but I'll just leave that out there for people to consider.
So that is an option. I don't know if the clerk wants to speak to it. I like that option, but.
Yeah, sorry. So there wouldn't be anything preventing council tonight from a motion, or this afternoon from a motion to reconsider, but there are some notice requirements around that. But if that is an option, then we can talk about procedurally how that would work.
Like, could it still come forward? Sorry, I don't mean to question you. You're obviously much more of an expert on procedural matters than I am, but because it's something that we're discussing, like there was a motion we considered, I forget, a couple of months ago that we were able to without notice because it was something that was on the floor.
So we would still need to waive notice on the motion to reconsider, which is up to you guys. 2/3 need to waive the notice, and then we could do the motion to reconsider if someone who just voted in the negative wanted to put that forward.
Yeah, and there would be no point in doing that unless we knew there were some people who may wish to change their mind given that we realize we've kind of put a roadblock in front of ourselves. But I guess to give some comfort to those who voted against it, it could be done with the assurance that Chief Crowell would come in May or June or whenever he was scheduled to come.
And sorry, just one other, sorry, Chair, and you can only do a motion to reconsider once, so that's something to keep in mind as well.
Councillor Salonen.
Thank you. Mine, I guess, was more of a kind of along the lines of what Councillor McCabe was saying, but a motion to waive notice, a motion to reconsider, followed by a motion to defer pending the information that Councillor Deutschmann had said that he wanted. I'm personally not willing to change my vote from a no right now, but I do want more information. I do appreciate, though, if it were done as a deferral versus us having to do a notice to reconsider at our next meeting. I think procedurally it might be a lot easier if we just make it a notice to defer pending more information for the 7th meeting, but I wanted to put those thoughts out to the group and see what people are thinking.
Thank you, Councillor Sallin. It feels like some of us are opining right now rather than putting motions forward, and that might be a judicious way to go given these unforeseen circumstances. I guess I would just say that I would think that I'd go back to Mr. Dyer's point that the numbers probably won't change. So even if people were to submit written questions, as Councillor Deutschmann has suggested, I think we need a date certain, and we would still have to deal with probably very similar figures and processes. Go ahead.
So a follow-up, if I could. That I totally appreciate and understand. What I'm suggesting is today to reopen the question to defer it, because we would have to reopen it in order to defer, and put that date as the 7th so that everybody sitting around this horseshoe knows. We can, I guess, decide on a time that you can get your questions in to be answered. That's what I was more so referring to, just so that we have a set procedurally held time versus now just leaving this in the abyss.
Thank you very much. Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. Notwithstanding that there are obviously questions around the horseshoe regarding the financials for WRPS, and we can certainly ask questions of WRPS in that regard, but I don't believe we have any ability to change their statements. Is that true?
Through the chair, I think I would say that's true. The exception might be if there was perhaps an error that was made that had to be corrected, but otherwise the statements are as approved by the board.
And even if there was an error, that would have to be dealt with by the WRPS board and not this circle.
Through the chair, I would say that would be the appropriate way to deal with it, yes.
So to what end are we going through this negative vote? I suppose if the only reason for the negative vote is the WRPS statements, then I would suggest nothing will change. That doesn't mean we can't ask the WRPS questions about how they do their reporting. But I don't believe we have any authority here to change that.
Thank you. Councillor Hunick.
Thank you, Chair. I want to go back to the original question of Mr. Dyer. I think what I need in order to vote positively for this is to have Councillor Deutschman's questions answered. And so whether that happens in chambers or via email, if they can be transparently explained, I'm not looking for numbers to change because I think 2 + 2 should always equal 4. And if numbers are different then than they are now and so on, that just creates a bigger problem. But I am looking for more transparency in terms of why budget lines were changed and titles were changed and money was taken out of operations rather than reserves. So.
Okay, thank you. That's more a statement than a question, correct? Okay. If you started with "did you know," then I would have known. Thank you. I'm going to go to Councilor Vrvanovich, who has not spoken on this as yet. Go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, and I apologize. I had a previous meeting prior to this getting rescheduled, and I realize I'm walking into clearly what seems to be a bit of a hornet's nest. So I will ask some questions with my, I guess, innocently in terms of asking them. So as I see it, these are a set of financial statements that are before us that we're being asked to either accept or not accept, notwithstanding the other parts of the motion. Is it not normally council's role in accepting these statements? I mean, my experience over many years on council is it's a pretty procedural kind of process, and the concerns that we would be raising is if we fundamentally had concerns around how either we internally did our work in terms of finance preparing those financial statements, and if we were dealing in the case of the audited statements, which were not at this point in time, if we had a concern with the work that the auditor did. Is that not normally what my understanding of this process is?
I'll let Mr. Dyer weigh in.
Through the chair, I think that's a fair description of what this process typically looks like.
And so I guess the second part of my question is, because I understand that this was defeated, and I presume it was on the basis of the financial statements, this would now need to go, well, because it was defeated, it would not go to council at all, is correct? But could it not be raised at council without a motion to reconsider or something?
I'm going to look to the clerk for that. And he's thinking. This is clearly unanticipated.
This is kind of a, I know it's...
Can I just underscore and agree? Graham's going to respond. Graham's going to confer. So thank you, Councilor Vrvanovich, for your question. I will look to the clerk to illustrate your suggestion.
Yeah, so I think we would be comfortable procedurally tonight at council if when we get to this motion, when we're going to look to ratify it, A has already been carried, a councillor could then amend that motion under the section to add in the wording for B and C, and then you would be voting on the motion as it was originally written, because we split it out into 2 votes earlier. So if a councillor were to bring that amendment tonight, we would be okay with that procedurally, and then you would vote on it at council this evening.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Councillor Deutschmann.
Thank you. I can't accept that ruling. That is a reconsideration by another name. That is a reconsideration. That is trying to do through the back door what you can't do through the front door. That is, you can't hitch now onto your wagon of B and C onto A and expect that that's not a reconsideration. I'm surprised by that interpretation, and I will oppose any attempt to try to do that in that manner.
So, Madam Chair,
Councillor Vavanovich?
thank you. Since I still have the floor on this, I guess I would say that certainly past experience would suggest that a motion coming from, the whole point of having committee and going to council is to have a gap in time, and we recognize why we're here today. The gap in time is hours as opposed to days in this instance. So there could be some sober second thought by members of council, and sometimes that sober second thought leads to amendments that then get considered in council to the motion that was ratified at committee. And so while I respect my colleagues' concern in this regard, I would suggest it's actually common practice. It doesn't happen often, but certainly there are many times when that in fact has been the case. I'll leave the debate and discussion to later this evening, but I will just point out I do understand the concerns of the frustration that some colleagues around the horseshoe may have around the police budget. I don't necessarily share those concerns, but I respect their right to have them and to get those questions answered. I think it would be unfortunate if we get in the practice of using what are typically perfunctory procedural matters that we have a responsibility to undertake, and start using them in the ways we sometimes see either at Queen's Park in Ottawa, where opposition parties create filibusters with other actions in order to try to get at issues that they want addressed otherwise.
Thank you very
Chair,
much.
point of order.
Councillor Deutschmann.
Thank you. First of all, I appreciate the debate, and I have full respect for Councillor Urbanovich and his many years as a representative of the community, and all that he does and the knowledge that he has, far more than I do. However, I will not have what was happening today described as a filibuster or perfunctory in characterizing what was brought forward in a very serious manner for very serious consideration.
Thank you. I don't know if that's a point of order. I believe that Councillor Urbanovich was just illustrating a context, and I do appreciate that Councillor Urbanovich was not here at the beginning of this process, so I don't think that was expressly pointed at you. Councillor James.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Just a question of clarification for Craig. In terms of getting this report from the WRPS, they just present it to you, like they just give it to you. Is there any collaboration or discussion? It's just approved by the board, we get it here, and then it gets submitted with everything else?
So through the chair, yes, it would be the responsibility of staff at the police to prepare and submit the report to the board. I would say that there is ongoing discussion and collaboration between staff in finance at the region and staff in finance at the police with respect to transactions and, sometimes the appropriate accounting treatment of certain items. So we'll work with them as needed, but it is ultimately their report to submit to the board.
Thank you. And just Thanks for clarifying that. I couldn't support this based on the information and at this point speculation provided by Councillor Deutschman. I do think there is a need to have further follow-up and some questions around this in a time where we are constantly being scrutinized around budgets. I think there were some valid questions that came up that for myself not voting for this raise some flags. So I don't know what will transpire at the end of this, but I do think that there were some valid things raised, and recognizing that our staff here essentially just received this information. It is within our due diligence, I think, to ask those necessary questions around this, even if it is procedurally just done with council. Thank you.
So I have a few more speakers. Everybody has spoken at least once, and I'm just going to intervene and point out that there are actually two choices for anyone who is not comfortable with where we've ended up at this meeting, defeating these two important pieces of a motion. One is to waive notice of motion and then do a notice of reconsideration, and that will only be worthwhile if some people who voted to defeat these motions have changed their minds. So I offer that to you. The other is that we could deal with it later today in council. And again, somebody would amend a motion that is coming from this committee meeting to council. It's up to individuals whether or not they want to move or second either of those. And I know that there are probably varying opinions and levels of comfort, but those are sort of the two, that's the fork in the road that we are faced with right now if we don't want to live with the defeat of this motion. Councillor Hunick.
Chair Edmund, this is a question, but I'm not quite sure how to word it, so please bear with me and try to understand what I'm saying if you can. So I'm getting the impression from the debate around the horseshoe that it's very important that we vote to approve this today. And if that's the case, I'm wondering what's the point of, why did we vote on this at all if we weren't at liberty to say no?
Through the chair, I think, what do I think? I think the committee does have the ability to either, I think you have, three choices with respect to the motions that were before you today. One is to approve them as written. One is to modify them in some way. For example, if you believed that the surplus allocation policy should be waived and a different approach to dealing with the surplus was required, that's certainly within the realm of possibilities and certainly something that committee could do. The third choice, of course, is to defeat those two motions, presumably with then some path to bringing information back in order to get yourselves to the point where you're comfortable with approving the motion. So I think we put these recommendations forward annually in good faith, knowing that they're up to council to approve. As indicated earlier, they're generally speaking, they're approved, and we move on to complete the financial statements and present to audit committee.
Councillor Hunick, does that answer your question?
Kind of. I don't know what else to ask. So thank you, Craig. You're awesome.
Councillor Wolf.
Through you, Madam Chair. I sort of like, well, I do like, not sort of, Councillor Salinen's such a suggestion about waiving notice, reconsider, and then deferral till May 7th, which would give us time to ask and answer the questions.
So that would be 3 different steps. Are you prepared to put forward a motion to waive notice of motion?
Yes, I am, and I have a seconder.
And Councillor Salinen is seconding it. Anybody want to talk about waiving notice of motion? Councillor Deutschman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The same effect could be that we just bring this back May 7th with the answers. A motion to reconsider can be brought back on May 7th to reconsider this. And in the meantime, we get answers to some of the questions. So we don't have to go through the multi-step program today. One of the parties that voted against it brings it back for May 7th as a motion at that time.
So we have a notice to waive a notice of motion, and my only caution would be you might ask questions and get answers that don't either satisfy you or you don't think are fulsome answers. So I don't think we can presume that a whole lot is going to change.
Sorry, Madam Chair, just point of order. You're suggesting that it won't be brought back May 7th? Is that what you're suggesting?
No,
I'm not clear what you just said there.
I'm suggesting that the tail end of your suggestion about not dealing with it in this multi-step process is the fact that we will ask our questions and they will be answered. My caution is that may not be satisfactory to everyone. Whether your question is answered, whether you like the answer, or whether you felt that it was a fulsome answer. So that's my only caution to your suggestion.
Right, but that's the same effect of the multi-step because we're bringing it to May 7th anyway. We're asking answers to questions, and then people will have to decide whether they're satisfied or not satisfied. I mean, that's the same under either scenario. What I'm suggesting is an easier path without going through this multi-step process.
So I'm going to ask, I've got several speakers on the list. We do have a notice to waive notice of motion. Is there anybody on this list that wants to speak to that waiving? Councillor Bravanovich.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And so I guess just from a procedural point of view, I just want to play this out. So we waive notice of motion. We have a motion potentially to see it go to May 7th. If that motion doesn't succeed, then what happens? Then we're back in the same situation, I guess. Do we then need a motion to do May 6th or May 5th or?
A notice of reconsideration can only be made once, so this is it.
But this is my point, is if it doesn't succeed, then what will happen with the overall motion? It'll go to council, and then we'll have to deal with it as tonight.
That's a possibility.
So I guess the other possibility is simply to put a motion of deferral on the floor, or attempt to, and defer this to tonight and deal with it tonight.
We won't have the answers to the questions. But we've already passed the motion to defer. We're trying to.
It's going to come tonight to council anyway, so we don't need a motion to defer.
Okay.
Point of clarification, Madam Chair.
But point of order has been used several times to allow for debate. That's not what point of order is for. Point of order is when the procedures are not being followed under the rules. And therefore, point of order cannot be used to butt in line and debate. It has to be, if you have a debate, then you get yourselves an
So I'm going to suggest that we call the motion that is before us, that the Regional Municipality of Waterloo waive notice of motion as per Section 70 of Bylaw 22-051, a bylaw to provide rules for governing the proceedings of council and its committees, and repeal Bylaw 00-031 as amended. So colleagues, I would ask you to use your e-scribe to vote yes or no on waiving the requirement of a notice of motion. Colleagues, that is carried. I'm now going to go back to Councillor Wolf. Did you want to put forward the second part of the three-parter?
Yes. So I suppose that this is the vote for reconsideration, and my point will be reconsideration so that we can then do a motion of deferral to May 7th, so we have a chance to have our questions answered. And because I think tonight we won't have any more answers than we do now.
So, Councillor Wolf, you cannot move this motion. It needs to be somebody who either didn't vote.
Oh, no, I voted against the motion, against.
Keep going.
Okay. Okay, so I think if it's clear, it's a motion to reconsider, and my next motion after that will be a deferral to May 7th. So motion for, and I have a seconder, Councillor Salonen.
Seconded by Councillor James.
Okay, that's fine.
So your motion is to reconsider the defeated motion at this point in time?
Yes.
We don't want to hear about your intention yet.
Right. Just.
Is everybody clear that what we're voting on now? A motion to reconsider. Councillor Foxton.
Thank you. Just for clarification, what, and Councillor, Craig, I've made you a councillor. Craig, this is the audited report that we're passing, is that correct? No, it's not? Okay, I don't want to get them mixed up. All right, go ahead.
We haven't gotten to the audit yet. This is in anticipation of getting to the audit. So this is a step closer to where we need to be, but it's not the audit. Okay, colleagues, if there are no other comments, we are now, it has been moved and seconded that the Regional Municipality of Waterloo defer the motion discussed.
I have a question.
That's not it.
I have a question.
Oh, it's just a motion to reconsider. Nice and short. Councillor Hunick, go ahead.
Hi. Everyone keeps talking about getting information by the WRPS, and we probably can't get it tonight, but has anyone considered calling their financial department to see if they could present at council tonight? Like, is there any possibility at all of getting these questions answered sooner than later?
For tonight, I think we're going to be burning the midnight oil, so I would say that tonight's council meeting is not a possibility, and I would also reiterate that Councillor Deutschmann had suggested that people send in written questions.
Okay, never mind. Thank you.
You're welcome. We are now voting on a motion to reconsider. Nice and short. Colleagues, that is carried. Councillor Wolf.
Now I would like to, through you, Madam Chair, to move a motion to defer this motion to May 7th with a chance for written questions to be submitted and answers received.
Craig.
Yes. Questions in advance of the 7th.
So, colleagues, Councillor Wolf has moved a motion, and was it seconded?
Yes, sorry.
By Councillor Salonen. It is a very short time frame, so we're going to suggest that written questions would have a deadline of this Friday. Can everybody live with that? Councillor Deutschmann. Were you not listening, hanging on my every word, Rob? It's a very short timeline, so written questions should be submitted by this Friday.
That's really short.
Everybody can live with that? Councillor Bavanovich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I unfortunately won't be supporting this this motion. I have to say, while I respect the interest of my colleagues in the police budget, or some of my colleagues in the police budget, I am deeply concerned about the process that's being undertaken here, and specifically as it relates to what our role is in terms of financial statements. And I think this is actually going beyond what is in fact the role of this council, and as such, I unfortunately can't support this. And my hope would be that we would be dealing with the original motion at council and in fact approving considering an amendment at council this evening and approving the motion. There's no question that there's legitimacy around asking some significant questions around the police budget, and there's a time and a place for it. And respectfully, I don't believe that the time and the place is when we're considering the past financial statements of the organization.
Thank you, Councillor Rabanovich. Before I call the question, Councillor Craig, I don't believe you've spoken on this issue.
Well, I'm sitting here listening to this over the last, I guess, half hour and what's happening. Not very happy about it at all in terms of the continual kind of attacks on the Police Services Board, what they're doing, what's happening. We've answered these questions repeatedly about surpluses and issues regarding the police budget. Police chief's been here, the chair of the board's been here, and now we're back to it again. I really, and I'll be very frank with you, and you may not like it, but the point is, there's this real anti-police flair that's sort of swirling around here, and it comes up in different times, different aspects, even to the point now that, you consider that what the police have done with their budget has deprived certain groups of certain things. I mean, it's complete nonsense, okay? And I'm really offended by all of this. And I think members of the board are offended by it too. We have a great police force. We have a very strong board, and they've been doing a great job. And the whole issue again of transparency comes up. I mean, give me a break here, folks. I'm not happy about it, and I'll support Councillor Vivanovic and his comments with regards to how we should deal with this.
Point of order.
Councillor Hunick.
I don't think it's appropriate for Councillor Craig to tell us he's offended by our votes. It's a democracy.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I think Councillor Hunick is saying that she feels she's doing her role and this is democratic process as opposed to questioning the police board.
Well, I am offended, okay? And I've been offended since the day I arrived on this particular issue.
Councillor Erb.
I'm never going to leave a meeting to take a phone call and come back in at the end of the discussion.
This is all your fault, Councillor Erb.
Pardon me?
This is all your fault.
Punishment. I'm going to, I agree with Councillor Rabanovich. I've been disappointed with the conversation that we've had around this council table for a month related to our police services. I think while we may think what we're talking about around the council table, I think the community interprets it as something negative towards our police force. And the argument is not with the police services board, or the argument I think is with the police services board. And I think it's very, very unfair to the men and women who work so hard to protect us on a daily basis. And I'm very, very disappointed in that. And somehow I wish we could change the narrative. As I understand these motions, and I'm not an accountant, but what we are doing then is questioning the people that work in the finance department at the police services, the information, the numbers that they're giving, and also those that do the accounting for them. And while I would see this as a pretty routine approval, for some reason it's not. And so I am disappointed in that. And the big disappointment is the negativity that seems to be spreading to our police services, which they do not deserve.
Thank you, Councillor Erb. Councillor Leggett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I take umbrage at the comments that are just being made by Councillor Craig and by Councillor Erb. I have always voted in support of the police department and the police board. Councillor Deutschman asked some legitimate questions of information that we should have. We have been asked to vote in support of something, and that means that our votes are valuable. If they're not valuable, if they're not considered, as Councillor Hunick stated, as democratic process, then don't bother asking me for my vote. I agree with the deferral so that we can have the answers to this. This has nothing to do with whether we support the police services or the police board. We have a right for information, and I am going to be supporting this deferral. So stop trying to shame those of us who, even me for the first time, am questioning this. Right to it, and I take umbrage to this.
So I'm going to get asked to say that I think that this is a very hot button issue. I think we have ended up in at a juncture that none of us would have anticipated. I would absolutely agree with Councillor Ivanovich. These are perfunctory sort of ways that we pass along, and I'm sure everybody read the reports, but we pass it on to the next stage, which is the audited statements. I would ask all of us to please not make personal comments. We can agree to disagree. We are reasonable people. We're intelligent people. So you can have a different viewpoint, but please keep it from being personal. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Just a clarification, and I think it will help, like maybe with the public understanding. So our police budget is always tied to our budget when we approve it, correct? Like we have to approve one with the other?
Through the chair, there's an obligation under the under which act? Under the Police Services Act for council to adopt a police services budget each year, and it's traditionally done at the same time as the budget for, I'll call it, for the rest of the region.
Okay, yeah, I was just looking into it, and I think some are separated, ours is more together. Okay, but just like a quick comment, I think that this might be actually an opportunity for better financial communication on both sides, because if we are confused, then the public is also probably confused. So I think that this would be really great for maybe having those questions answered, and then it will give more clarification to all parties.
Thank you for that. And I would just remind all of us that these are statements for 2023. And last time I looked, we're in 2024. So this is really looking through the rearview mirror. Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. I understand that there's a lot of questions around the table, and I'm going to make the point that I made before. I don't believe that we certainly can ask the police services for answers to these questions, and they're obviously important to a lot of people, and they should be answered. But I think that's a very separate issue than the statements that we're dealing with here. And if I'm misleading on this, please correct me, but we have a set of statements here that have been approved by the Police Services Board, that have been prepared by the police services, that are the purview and the responsibility of the Police Services Board. That's what we have in front of us. Any questions that we ask, we still can't change the statements that are before us. The Police Services Board can, if as I think Councillor Deutschman said, if there's an error, but that is still the Police Services Board that has that responsibility and that duty, not us. So I think there's two issues. One is the statements we have before us, and the other is, can we make a motion to ask the Police Services Board and or staff to respond to the questions we have regarding their statements?
Mr. Dyer saying, yes, we can certainly pose the question. And again, it's a very tight timeline. Councillor Chance?
Sorry, I'm not sure there's a timeline because I don't think that, am I missing something in this process that our approval hinges on the Police Services Board reports? Maybe I'm missing something.
Through the chair, I think that committee and or council could ask, whatever questions it wishes of the board at any time. As I stated earlier, the statements, the police statements are for police services staff to prepare and present and for the board to approve. And then we go through a consolidation process when we put our overall financial statements together, which goes back maybe to my earlier comment about, is there a way that we can find a way to do this concurrently, keep our year-end schedule moving, but then also ultimately get the information that this committee is looking for to help understand the police results.
Councillor James.
Hi, thank you through you, Chair. Can we just call the question on this?
I'm sorry, Councillor James.
We still have to vote for, can we just call the question now and have everyone vote on the deferral to the 7th?
So here's where we are. We have waived notice of motion. We have supported a motion of reconsideration. Now we're dealing with a motion to defer. Should the motion to defer lose, the original motion would be on the floor, and then we could vote on that. Or if this was, right. So we're reconsidering, if the motion to defer is not supported, the original motion is on the floor because we have now voted to reconsider it, and we could pass it now. And again, I would reiterate, being a member of the police board, I understand what it's like to wear two hats. I understand the due diligence that council's colleagues around the horseshoe want to exercise, but I have to tell you, sitting around the board table at WRPS with two of my very fine colleagues here, I would have to tell you there is due diligence. There are very tough questions asked, and there is a lot of scrutiny. So I understand that if you're not at that table, that's the board table at WRPS, you may not understand the kind of scrutiny that is applied to this. I'd also point out that the surpluses both at the region and at WRPS have policies surrounding them that dictate how surpluses are applied. We could have a long debate whether or not those are the right policies, but those are policies that we have regional council and previous councils have approved, and there are policies that WRPS board members have approved. So it's not the Wild West. I understand that there have been sincere concerns brought forward by one colleague, Councillor Deutschmann, but at this juncture, I would have to ask all of us to examine, do we think that the deferral to May 7th is going to come up with substantive changes or answers that are going to change on what we're voting on? So I've had a request to call the question by Councillor James. Is there anybody that feels their head is going to explode if they don't get to comment on this?
Okay, Madam Chair, that is not an appropriate comment, with respect.
Do you feel compelled to make a comment, Councillor Deutschmann?
Thank you very much. I waited patiently to be back on the list. So I just want to say this is not a perfunctory operation by council. We're being asked to accept financial statements. We've raised some questions about certain allocations in these financial statements, which are being presented with a $345,000 surplus at the end of the year. I've raised just a few points that raise some serious questions about that. This is not about budget surplus allocation policy. That's not that at all. This is about taking a look at the information that's presented to us. And, comments about saying this is 2024 and these statements are 2023. We're dealing with these statements in 2024 and they're presented to us in 2024 because we have a serious obligation to take a look at these and decide whether we accept them or not. I also want to point out, the people that raise the questions about these statements don't go on and talk about anti-police or any of those other sorts of statements that are raised, which are completely disrespectful and, in my opinion, breach the code of conduct that we all are governed by to accuse other members of council of certain activities. This is not about that. This is about taking a look at these numbers that are presented to us. We are responsible for the budget. This is not operational. We are not looking at the operations of the police. We're not looking at individual things that they do, but we're asking why was a transfer of funds made to reserve during the year when that properly should have been done after complete surplus was determined and then the allocation made? Why was the change to the wage and salaries made in the fourth quarter when it was shown a certain way, and why such a significant drop? Those are fair questions that we can ask around this horseshoe. This is not a rubber stamp. We're not here to just say yes to everything that comes before us. We're here to scrutinize what comes before us. And that's part of the process that I take seriously. And no disrespect to anyone, but if it's not required for us to scrutinize, then as Councillor Leggett said, why are you asking for our vote on this? All right, this is significant. And we demand answers to these fair questions. That's it. Not disparaging any member of Police Services Board. I have watched all the Police Service Board meetings. I have reviewed all the Police Service Board minutes. I'm not disparaging any member of Police Services Board, and that's never come up from anyone who's questioned these statements. Never. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Deutschman. And I'm now going to call the question.
Okay.
And just to remind everybody that we are now voting on a motion to defer. And if that gets defeated, then we will be dealing with the main motion. So colleagues, it is carried. There is a motion to defer till May the 7th. Written questions should be in by this Friday. And the questions should be directed to Mr. Dyer. We'll do a follow-up email to make sure everybody is clear on that. So colleagues, we promised Mr. Dyer that we would work him till his last day, and it would be very interesting, and I want to thank colleagues for making sure that that is happening. Next agenda item is 7.2.2, and it's the 2025 plan for plan and budget timetable. And as it was, I think, set out at the very beginning, we started in 23, went to 24, and now we're in 2025. Councillor Foxton. Moved by Councillor Foxton, seconded by Councillor James.
Chair Redmond.
Councillor Deutschman.
I'd like to propose an amendment.
You may.
I'd like to propose that the Waterloo Regional Police Services Board budget be presented not on the November date that's in the plan, but at our October 18th meeting to provide us with additional time to review. I'll speak to that if there's a seconder.
Do you have a seconder?
I don't know.
So Councillor James, okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The reason I'm proposing an earlier time is just to give us more time to be able to ask questions and assess the budget from Waterloo Regional Police Services. The last budget process was significantly condensed in time versus the first year that we were here, which was, obviously it was an election year, and so it got deferred into January, February, March, or January, February. So we had more time to deal with the police services budget. But last year, you know, wanting to get our budget done by December and only receiving the budget from police on mid-November, really doesn't give us sufficient time to adequately fulfill our responsibilities of ensuring that we're satisfied with what is being presented. So I wanted to propose that we have the budget presented to us just 1 month earlier to give us additional time. And I don't consider that to be a burden on Waterloo Regional Police Services to be able to provide that to us.
Councillor Salonen.
Sorry, I was waiting for after that amendment. I had my own amendment that I wanted to add.
Okay.
Possible. So if you just want to tell me when that time would be appropriate.
I appreciate that. Does anybody want to speak to the amendment? Councillor James.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I just have a question for those who are on our Police Services Board. Is this something that would be realistic in terms of timelines, given when you all meet, for the chief to come ahead of time?
I appreciate the comment that it won't be a burden on WRPS. My sense is that month may make a huge difference. WRPS is, again, a very large organization, but the motion's on the floor, and I guess we will deal with it at WRPS.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, voting on the amendment. So it's the motion as presented, but amending the Police Services Board present on October 18th to allow for additional time to review. So, Councillor Deutschman, there's no meeting scheduled for October 18th, so are you just suggesting that a report be received by that time?
Sorry, I may have misread. When is the date of the October committee meeting?
Yeah, so through the chair, the initial meeting of the Budget Committee's review process would be October the 16th.
Okay, that's the date. Thank you.
So you meant to say October 16th.
Madam Chair.
Councillor Craig.
Madam Chair, thank you. I'm just wondering if we should send this back to Police Services to see if, in fact, they could have this done a month earlier. I think the board ought to reflect on that. I don't have any problem of moving it back, but as long as I hear from my colleagues and from the staff at WRPS, I'd like to know that. So I can't support this, just arbitrarily moving it.
So Councillor Shantz, I'm seeing a head nod to you.
Yeah, I agree with, excuse me, with Councillor Craig. I don't know if this is reasonable. Maybe it's reasonable if someone came and said we need to present our budget a month earlier. What would that mean for our staff? So I would like to hear from them how reasonable it is as well.
Thank you. Councillor McCabe.
I was just wondering if we could maybe wait until May 7th when they're coming and ask them then.
WRPS are not coming on May 7th. That will be when questions, answers to questions have been received. The chief is coming in June to do his mid-year report.
Okay, I was assuming someone from Police Services would be here.
Councillor Deutschman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just 2 points. One, I just want to say it might be beneficial to have someone from Police Services here, from Finance, to talk about those issues, but maybe we defer this motion, if we can, to May 7th then, and get a response back from Police Services about that issue of a month earlier.
So you're suggesting that we defer not just your amendment, but the entire budget review timetable?
Yeah, I'm prepared to pull the amendment, defer this motion to hear whether they could come October 16th with a budget, and then decide this on May 7th.
So thank you. So Councillor Deutschman is suggesting he pull the amendment, and was it Councillor James that seconded it? Are you agreeable to that?
Just repeat the why behind pulling that, Councillor Deutschman.
Sure, it's to allow Police Services to respond back, to follow up on questions that Councillor Craig asked to see if it's an issue or not, and hear from Police Services by May 7th.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
So that amendment has been withdrawn. The motion stands, and Councillor Salonen, you had a different motion.
Yes, I just had an amendment that hopefully won't be as controversial. It's just on final budget day. I see that we don't start until 10 a.m. and historically that day is super long. And I know a lot of our motions that we had submitted in time for councillors got pushed to other times. And I know that certainly for Wilmot has caused an issue with the whole Oxford Road 5 thing. So I'm just asking if we could start at 9 a.m. or possibly even 8:30. I know it'll be a super long day, but if I could add that amendment that I'm.
I believe that's chair's discretion, so if you are happy just making that as a suggestion, we'll certainly make sure Councillor Harris is aware of it.
Okay, then why do we see the timetable if it's the chair's discretion?
There's suggestions so people can block their time out, so.
Oh, okay. Okay, then sure, if that can be direction that we start earlier than 10 a.m.
Yeah, so just as an example, last year in the schedule, we had meetings that were starting at noon and we ended up amending the schedule and starting them at 9 a.m. So Chair Harris can just do that through the direction of staff. If we have a lot of stuff that we're going to talk about, it's looking like it's going to be a busy day. It's just in there so that we can block everybody's calendars well enough in advance so that you have the day set. And then closer to, we can certainly adjust the start time on any meeting. It's not just set in stone once we approve this budget or the budget timetable right now. We changed a ton of start times last year as an example. I think we had a whole bunch of 12 noon ones and we started at 9 in the morning as an example.
All right, I mean, I get what you're saying. I'm about planning in advance. I don't think budget is drastically going to become not a complex topic, but sure.
So
whatever.
Councillor Salonen, do you want to put a motion forward that we start at 9 a.m.?
I would rather that than just block it out.
Do we have someone who would second that? Councillor Bravanovich. Okay. Speaking to the amendment, Councillor Bravanovich.
Well, I actually would suggest that for all of them that we have that time, because I find at least if we're changing and you're taking time away from me at the last minute, that's a problem because I got to reschedule meetings. We all welcome extra time along the way.
Sounds like a really good plan because we can all bond as we talk about these important issues. So we will take that under advisement. Councillor Foxton.
Thank you, Chair. So if we deferred this motion, because we're going to get the information from the Police Service Board and that about coming, I would still like staff to send out the dates and the times as a tentative so that I know not to book anything in them.
So, Councillor Foxton, you're being misled by what is on the in front of us. Councillor Deutschmann withdrew his amendment, so really we are just dealing with the 2025 plan and budget review timetable set up in Appendix A. So ignore what's on the e-scribe.
Okay, thank you.
But thank you for reading. We appreciate it.
I thought we had made an amendment. Okay, so we are still dealing with the amendment then, okay.
We are, but not having to do with the police service timetable.
Just trying to keep track of everywhere. I thought this was an easy motion.
This is not the part of the day, colleagues, that I thought was going to be complicated. Okay, so we are dealing with that the budget review timetable be amended so that all strategic planning, budget, and committee meetings start time be set at 9 a.m. So as amended, please, it's been moved and seconded. Please use your e-scribe. So colleagues, that's unanimous. I love those votes. We have, so now we need to move the motion as amended. Please use your e-scribe
Sorry, I thought there
button.
was a deferral.
No
I
deferral.
moved a deferral. That's why I removed my amendment and said I would move a deferral to May 7th so that council, so we could get an answer from WRPS about changing the date possibly. And I said I was following up
But
on
that was
Councilor
your okay. But that was your amendment that was deferred, not the entire budget timetable, correct?
Well, okay, I mean, I guess, I just, I was moving a deferral of the motion so that we could get an answer by May 7th from WRPS. Right, you're right.
As soon as we hear back from WRPS, you're free to amend that motion at any time. Okay? So now the main motion is amended. Colleagues, that is carried. We have a council tracking list. Any other business? Councillor Deutschmann. Oh, sorry, Councillor Foxton, are you still up for before? Councillor Deutschmann.
Thank you, Chair Redmond. Two things. One, thinking about the 2026 municipal election for some of you, I was just following up on an email I'd sent to Mr. Short to see if there was any review underway to consider the municipal turnout in 2024 and what steps, or 2022, and what steps might be considered to improve voter engagement and hopefully turnout. And I just raise it now so we're thinking about it in advance if there was something that was being considered.
Yeah, so internally, our department wouldn't do a review on election turnout. Elections Ontario would. I have no idea what review they're doing or what they're going to be publishing, but I know that each election cycle, they do a review of it. So we could reach out to the chief electoral officer and see if they were going to be doing a review, but internally, we wouldn't look at voter turnout or things like that in the clerk's department.
Okay, that's the first part, I guess. But what about things that the region can undertake to assist in an election to improve voter engagement and communication of information to voters?
Tim's going to weigh in. Connie, sorry.
Thanks, through the chair. So there are a group of communications professionals from the region and the area municipalities that work together on providing voter information. If it's the wish of council, we could reach out to that group and ask them what their plans are for the year and when they would be starting to look at different initiatives for promoting sort of voter turnout.
Is that a required direction or a motion, Madam Chair?
Connie, could they come and bring a report to council? Or an update?
It might be easier if we reached out to them and then provided the information by email to council, if that were appropriate.
Councillor Deutschmann?
Sure, we'll start. I appreciate receiving that and seeing what we can do and work from that. The second thing I had, if I may.
I got her.
The second thing I had was, given that we at the region have declared intimate partner violence an epidemic, and recent news stories from across the province on various issues, I was wondering, I'd like to know what steps we might be taking with respect to here at the region and with respect to our upcoming budget, I guess, to support that declaration. And I'm not sure how to go about getting that information or finding out if there's something that's being contemplated, since we at the region declared it an epidemic. What have we been doing about it?
So I know that we have the community safety and well-being plan. And again, Connie, do you want to speak to this?
Yes, through the chair. So the intimate partner violence is one of the 4 priorities of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. We've just launched the call for applications for this year's upstream funding, and that is one of the priorities that is being looked at in terms of priorities for funding from the upstream fund this year. And certainly, you know, all of our departments are utilizing the Community Safety Wellbeing Plan as a guide for their planning. So I would expect to see that that would be considered as part of other plans and priorities that are coming forward. I know that that's been considered as part of the plan to end chronic homelessness, just as one example.
Just for clarification then, to follow up on that, I would ask that we hear about specific programs that we may be funding through that program dealing with intimate partner violence then.
Okay, I would think that that would be a little while away because they haven't granted the upstream funding yet, have they, Connie?
I won't speak for Fawzia Beg in terms of the timelines for when the grants would come, but I think applications are due this month. But I could have her send a note to council on when we expect the funding allocations to be done.
Thank you. Councillor Foxton.
Thank you. Getting back to the election thing, we had a lot of discussions about low turnout. You guys are going to hate me. I'm sorry, Jim. But we felt the signs not allowed along the regional roads deterred a lot, made people forget. There was very few signs, unless you drove into the cities and hamlets, and a lot of people don't. They drive on the main roads. And even Mike Farwell, who backed no signs, said it was the wrong thing to do because that we believe it caused great lower voter turnout. So I would like to re-look at that sign when we bring back the election information. We voted that in last time, and I'd like it brought forward again. I know they're ugly, but it keeps people aware of it. And we tell people if you vote, we'll take the signs down.
So, Councillor Foxton, that was a previous council that brought that policy in, so we will look at looking at that and reviewing it before the next.
Thank you so much.
Councillor James.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Just want to come back to the intimate partner gender-based violence. I know there are things that our region initiatives potentially to do, but I do sit on the AMO social policing task force and had a meeting with the social policy task force earlier this week. And I do know that there is significant funding that will be provided through the province to address gender-based violence and intimate partner violence, upwards of close to 300 million. So just in some of the potential opportunities coming forward to assist with this region, and I am in meetings regarding that as well, just for Councillor Deutschmann and those on council.
Thank you very much for your hard work and participation on that, Councillor James, and bringing that update. That's great. Councillor Craig.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Just to remind people that Police Services Board does have statistics on that. And on the last time we were looking at it, I was really startled about just the dimensions of what was happening. And I think that this is a good issue to get into. With regards to voter turnout, I can remember Mayor Claudette Miller in 1985 saying voter turnout was very, very low. It was 46% for municipal election. You can see where we are today.
And yet we are the level of government closest to the people. Thank you, colleagues. Our next meeting will be May 7th. That date's been referenced a few times. I think that'll be a busy day. Keep your e-scribe open as we need to go. We need a motion to adjourn and then to consider a motion to go and close, and then we'll consider a motion to adjourn. So if I could have a mover and a seconder to go into closed session. Moved by Councillor Foxton, seconded by Councillor James. Please use your e-scribe. Colleagues, that is carried. Now, if I could have a motion to adjourn, moved by Councillor McCabe, seconded by Councillor Leggett. Do you want to adjourn? Okey doke. Please use your e-scribe. That's carried, colleagues. We will see you in the Waterloo room.